The stars above Earth shimmered like quiet sparks in the dark, until something massive broke through. A strange ship, glowing with blue energy, appeared near the moon. It was like nothing seen before, smooth like a whale, shining like a comet, and silent as it hovered. People across Earth held their breath. News spread within minutes. Every space agency locked onto the target. World leaders gave quick, tense orders. Soon, fighter jets roared into orbit, and missile platforms aimed at the unknown visitor. On the bridge of the UESS Valor, Captain Raylan Ward stared at the view screen. He had trained for war, but never for this. Raylan, a man shaped by loss and duty, had seen too many good people die. He never expected to witness first contact in his lifetime, and certainly not like this. Then a voice spoke through their systems, soft and clear, as if spoken by someone human. "My name is Princess Alira of the Thalari Dominion. We come in. Peace." Her words were calm, warm, yet tension gripped everyone tighter. People didn't trust easily anymore, not after decades of war and fear. Without warning, a rogue human fleet broke protocol and fired. Energy blasts flew across space. Striking the alien ship, its shields lit up in blue light, but it didn't fire back. Still, the damage was real. Sparks burst from its hull. Part of the ship exploded near the rear. It began to drift. On the Valar, Raylan cursed under his breath. They had just made the first contact with a new life form, and someone fired the first shot. That single act changed everything. Orders came in from Earth's high command to prepare for engagement, but Raylan didn't listen. He saw something that others missed: an escape pod launching from the wounded alien ship. It was spinning out of control. Made a quick decision, shouted to his crew, and moved the Valor closer, despite warnings. The pod was small, on fire, and could explode, but he didn't care. The ship's robotic arms pulled the pod aboard. The crew cut it open, weapons ready, hearts racing. Inside they found her. A woman alien, yes, but beautiful in a strange, otherworldly way. Her skin was a soft glow of silver. Her hair shimmered like starlight. She was bleeding, one arm broken, but her eyes looked right at Raylan, not with fear, not with hate, but with hope. He stepped forward, knelt beside her, and offered a hand. She took it. And something passed between them, something silent and powerful. She opened her mouth and whispered his name, perfectly. Raylan. He froze. How did she know it? Then he noticed the translator chip in her ear. She smiled weakly, then fainted. The room fell silent. Everyone looked at Raylan. He lifted her carefully and took her to the medical bay, ignoring the stares. It wasn't just first contact anymore. Something deeper had just begun. Something that no one, not Earth, not the stars, was ready for. And it all started with a broken pod, eh? Bleeding alien princess and a human who refused to let her die. ChatGPT said. Alira lay still on the medical table. Her silver skin bruised and her breathing weak, while the lights above flickered softly. Raylan sat nearby, watching as the doctors worked to heal wounds that were unlike anything they'd treated. Before, her body was similar to a human's, but her blood glowed faintly blue, and her organs pulsed with strange rhythms. Still, she held on, and so did Raylan. He had seen too much death in his life to walk away from someone who needed help. When she finally opened her eyes, they were calm and sharp, like she was studying everything, every beep, every motion, and most of all, him. She tried to sit up, but pain stopped her. He gently helped her up and gave her water. She thanked him in clear, careful English, her voice quiet and smooth, like wind through leaves. They talked, first only a little, then more. She asked questions about Earth, about humans, music, rain, and the smell of flowers. She laughed softly when he told her about Earth food, and tilted her head in wonder when he played a jazz song through the ship's speakers. "It's full of emotion," she said, "like a storm inside the heart." Raylan didn't know why, but her words touched him. He found himself talking more than usual, opening up about his past, about growing up in war-torn cities, about losing his sister in the orbital fires, about why he joined the fleet not for war, but to keep others from suffering like he. Had Alira listened without judgment? Her eyes stayed on him like she saw deeper than others. One day, she brought out a small device from her suit, like a crystal that played songs from her home world. The melody was haunting and beautiful, rising and falling like waves. Raylan sat with her for hours, letting the sounds fill the silence between them. The crew began to notice. Whispers spread across the Valar. Some called it foolish. Others saw the look in Raylan's eyes when he spoke to her, and the way she watched him when he left the room. Their connection grew stronger every day, built not from orders or logic, but from trust and the way their hearts began to beat in rhythm. Then the news came. Earth's command sent a direct message. Keep her detained. Prepare for transfer. She is not to be trusted. At the same time, a signal arrived from the Thaleri Dominion. They demanded their princess back, calling her a traitor, claiming she had gone rogue, broken protocol, and risked war. Alira's face grew pale when she read the message. Her father, the Thaleri Emperor, had turned against her. She had come to Earth's system hoping to build peace, not war. Her mission was secret, and someone had wanted it to fail. Raylan stood with her as the crew debated. Some wanted to follow orders, others weren't sure, but Raylan made it clear he would not hand her over to people who wanted her dead. Not Earth, not Thaleri. She trusted us, he told them. And I trust her. That night alarms blared. A new ship appeared near the edge of the system, a Thaleri warship larger than the Valar, its weapons armed and glowing. They didn't hail, they didn't speak. They came to take the princess by force. Raylan looked at Alira, and for the first time, she looked afraid. Not for herself, but for him. He reached out, took her hand, and gave her a quiet promise. Have to go through me first. She held his hand tighter. In the silence before battle, they stood close, forehead to forehead, their hearts full of something bigger than fear. In that moment, two souls from different worlds knew the truth. What had started as first contact turned into something far more powerful. Something that could either bring peace, burn the stars. The enemy ship loomed outside the window like a dark mountain floating through space, covered in glowing red lines and bristling with weapons that could crush entire cities. Inside the Valar, Captain Raylan stood on the command deck with his hands clenched behind his back, staring at the screen as alarms echoed through the halls. His crew moved quickly, faces tight with fear and focus. They all knew the Thaleri warship outgunned them by far. It was built for battle, with thick shields, plasma cannons, and a crew trained from birth to fight. The Valor was a fast response cruiser strong, yes, but not meant for a direct fight with something that size. Still, Raylan refused to retreat. He looked at Alira, who now wore a slim suit of human combat armor, its plating reshaped to fit her form. She had tied her glowing hair back and carried a stun blade at her side. She didn't look like a fragile guest anymore. She looked like someone ready to fight for what she believed in. And she believed in him. When the Thaleri ship opened fire, space lit up with bursts of blue and red. The first hit slammed into the Valor's shields, sending a quake through the floor. Lights flickered. Raylan barked out orders, sending countermeasures and drones to draw fire. He ordered his pilot to twist the ship into risky maneuvers, diving close to debris and flaring the engines harder than they'd ever been pushed. They dodged, struck back, and danced between blasts like a leaf in a storm, but it wasn't enough. The Valor's engines groaned. One section of the hull broke open. Fire control teams rushed to seal the breach. And still, Raylan pushed forward. We can't win in strength, he told his team. We win with speed, with brains, and with guts. He led them through risky turns, narrow passes, and surprise strikes. They disabled one of the enemy's side cannons with a well-placed missile. They sent a decoy drone that made the Thaleri think they were preparing to warp, then used the distraction to slip behind them. But every time they landed a hit, the enemy struck back harder. Then something changed. Alira stepped up to the command console and used her codes ancient and royal to send a message to the warship. It paused their assault for just a few seconds. She appeared on their screens, standing tall, her voice steady as she begged them to stand down. She called the enemy captain by name, told him this war was a mistake, that peace could still be saved. But his reply was cold. You chose them over us. Now you are nothing. The war resumed, worse than before. They were out of time. As more hits shook the Valor, Raylan made his choice. He ordered a sudden charge straight toward the Thaleri dreadnought. Oh! His crew stared in shock. We're not running, he said. We're punching through. Engines flared. Shields screamed. Lasers flashed across the screen. The Valor dove into the heart of the fight, spinning and burning until they were nearly nose-tunes with the enemy. Then they fired every last missile they had. The blast knocked out the Thaleri ship's main thrusters. It didn't destroy them, but it bought time. Raylan gave the order to jump warp drive active, destination unknown. The stars stretched. The enemy vanished. The Valor was gone. The ship reappeared in deep space, systems damaged, power low. But they were alive. On the bridge, people cheered and cried. And in the middle of it all, Raylan turned to Alira. She had been silent, staring at the screen. Then she looked at him, eyes soft but strong. You risked everything, she whispered. For me. He shook his head. No. For us. That moment, surrounded by sparks, cracked walls, and wounded crew, something powerful passed between them. No more doubt. No more hesitation. Their bond wasn't just relit, had survived fire, fear, and war. And though the galaxy had just declared them enemies, they had become something stronger than any army. They had become a reason to fight together. The Valor floated in deep space, its hull cracked, lights dim, systems running on backup power. The stars outside blinked silently, unaware of the chaos left behind. Inside the ship, repair crews moved through smoke-filled halls, sealing leaks, resetting circuits, and helping the wounded. Medical bays were full, and the scent of burnt metal lingered. Out. But there was no paniconally quiet focus and tired strength. Captain Raylan stood in the strategy room, a dark bruise forming on his temple, staring at a 3D map of nearby systems. Alira stood beside him, her eyes sharp but tired. She had not slept, not since the battle, knew the Thaleri wouldn't stop. Her father, the Emperor, would send more ships. He wouldn't care about peace or her life. She had disobeyed the old ways, broken a deal made in secret, one that promised the galaxy would belong to the Dominion. Starting with Earth, Alira told Raylan everything then. Her mission was never approved by the Thaleri court. She had come alone, with a loyal crew, to speak to Earth first, to warn them that war was coming. But someone betrayed her. The ship that attacked her wasn't sent just to bring her back. It was sent to kill her. Raylan listened in silence, fists clenched. Earth was already on high alert, suspicious of aliens. If they heard the Thaleri had tried to kill their own princess inside human space, it could spark something worse than war. It could make peace impossible. He contacted High Command, hoping they would listen, hoping to explain before more blood was spilled. But the message he received back was cold and short. Return to Earth. Bring the Thaleri woman for questioning. Do not speak to the press. Do not share information. This is now under full military control. Raylan knew what that meant. They would take Alira, lock her away, and bury the truth. He couldn't let that happen. The galaxy was already full of lies and secrets. He wasn't going to let the truth die in a prison cell, not when it could stop a war. Not when the woman beside him had already risked her life to save both sides. He made a decision. They wouldn't go back to Earth, not yet. Instead, he would take the Valor to a hidden outpost, one of the few places still free from control. An old station called Helix Drift, once a mining hub, now a shelter for rogues, smugglers, and exiles. If anyone knew how to broadcast the truth without filters or control, it would be there. The journey to Helix Drift was slow. The ship needed repairs. Supplies were low. They avoided trade routes, dodged scanners, and stayed hidden in asteroid fields. And during those long hours, something deeper grew between Raylan and Alira. In quiet corners of the ship, they talked about their worlds, hers full of ancient power and heavy rules, his full of fire and freedom. They shared stories, laughed at strange customs, and comforted each other when the silence grew too heavy. One night, in the dark of the observation deck, Alira rested her head on Raylan's shoulder. She told him how she always felt alone among her people, raised more as a symbol than a daughter. He told her how he stopped believing in love after losing too many friends in war. But there, in that quiet place, between stars and pain, they found something gentle and true. Not weakness, not distraction, something worth living for. When the Valar finally reached Helix Drift, they were welcomed with suspicion. Ships circled them. Weapons were armed. But Raylan had friends, Thralled rebels, war survivors, and people who remembered the cost of silence. One of them, a sharp-eyed woman named Kale, agreed to help. She ran a pirate signal strong enough to reach across half the galaxy.
Always.
Her help, they prepared a message. Alira would speak. She would tell the truth. That war was being planned. That she had come to stop it, and that both Earth and Thaleri citizens were being lied to. Raylan stood beside her not as a soldier or captain, but as proof. Proof that two enemies could stand together, speak together, and believe in something better. The broadcast began. Screens across stations, ships, and worlds flickered with their image. People listened. Some doubted. Some believed. Some prepared for war. Because truth is powerful. But it doesn't stop bullets. As the signal spread, so did the danger. Thaleri fleets changed course. Earth ships began hunting for the Valar. The storm was coming faster than anyone expected. And deep in the shadows of space, something darker stirred forces that didn't want peace, who thrived on fire. But for now, the spark had been lit. The world had heard. Two hearts, once strangers, now beat for the same hope. The moment Alira's message reached the galaxy, everything changed. Worlds far and near began to whisper her name. Some called her brave, others called her a traitor. On Earth, protests broke out, some for peace, others demanding war. Worlds, noble houses argued over honor and power. The Emperor was furious. He sent a kill order. Alira was to be captured or destroyed. No trial, no mercy. Meanwhile, Earth's High Command declared Raylan a rogue officer, placing a bounty on him and the crew of the Valar. The outpost at Helix Drift became a cage. Raylan knew they couldn't stay. Kale, his old friend, gave him intel there was one last hope. A neutral world known as Varelia, ruled by ancient laws that neither Earth nor Thaleri dared to break. It was home to the Circle of Accord, a council of elder species that had stayed out of war for centuries. If they could reach Varelia and present their Prufliaris message, the battle data, the betrayal, they might stop the war before it truly began. But getting there wouldn't be easy. The route passed through the Riven Fields, a dead zone of shattered planets and broken fleets. Filled with black holes and pirate strongholds, Raylan gathered his crew, told them the truth. Most chose to stay. They believed in him. They believed in her. The Valar launched under cover of night. Almost at once they were followed. Enemy ships, both human and Thaleri, picked up their trail. The chase through the Riven Fields began like a hunt through a burning maze. The Valar weaved between ancient wreckage and twisting gravity wells. Sometimes they stopped engines completely and drifted in silence, hiding from scans. Other times, they fired back with all they had, bursting through traps with smoke and thunder. Alira fought beside the crew now, guiding Raylan through alien symbols on old maps, warning of hidden mines and shadow beasts that roamed the fields. Her voice became their compass, her memory their path. Raylan stayed at the helm, hands tight. On controls, eyes locked on the path ahead. Each hour they lost more power. The ship groaned like a dying beast. Still, they pushed on. One night, a squadron of bounty hunters cornered them in a graveyard of fallen ships. With weapons locked and shields nearly gone, Raylan and Alira stood together in the war room. "We can't fight them all," she said. "Not like this." He looked at her, eyes tired but steady. "Then we don't fight," he answered. outthink. With quick planning, they triggered an old Rex-core reactor. The blast lit up the field like a second sun, blinding the bounty ships just long enough for the Valor to slip away. But the explosion damaged their engines again. The ship slowed. Time ran short. As they neared the last stretch to Varelia, the final blow struck. The Thalari destroyer, sleek and black like a shark, appeared in their path. It was captained by Alira's own cousin, General Varn, the man who betrayed her. He hailed them, his voice cold and bitter. "You've gone far enough, cousin. Come home or burn." Alira stepped forward, no fear in her face. "You've already killed everything I once called home." Varn gave no reply. His ship fired first. Raylan shouted for all hands to battle stations. The last fight began in fire and fury. The Valar moved like a wounded bird, darting and spinning, shields flaring and armor peeling away. Alira manned a cannon herself, blasting through drones and fighters. Sparks flew through the halls. Men and women screamed and fought. Raylan made a desperate call. He overloaded the warp core to punch through the final distance. The ship screamed under the pressure. Lights burst, metal tore. But they reached Varelia's orbit just as the core shut down. Systems failed. Engines died. The ship didn't explode, and through the smoke and silence, they saw it. Varelia glowing with soft green light. Peaceful, untouched, and protected by old machines that watched from the stars like gods. The Thalari destroyer halted. Even Varn could not fire now. Old laws forbade it. They had made it. But the ship was broken. Many of the crew were hurt. Raylan fell to his knees, blood on his hands, breathing hard. Alira knelt beside him, touched his face gently, and whispered, "We made it." He looked at her and smiled weakly. Together, they had survived the storm. But the real test still waited below, in the halls of the Accord, where the truth had to be heard and where the fate of two worlds rested on love, courage, and one final stand. The moment the Valar landed on the surface of Varelia, silence wrapped around everything. The air was soft, almost glowing, filled with floating particles that shimmered like tiny stars. Giant silver trees rose in the distance, and strange, peaceful, creatures moved through the fields without fear. The wounded crew were helped off the ship and taken to rest stations made by the elder species. Raylan, bruised and exhausted, stayed near Alira as they walked toward the Heart Doma Massive. Structure built into the land itself, alive with light and old energy. The Circle of Accord waited inside, a council of ancient beings who had not taken sides in any war for over 1,000 years. They were tall, calm, and powerful in presence, some with skin like stone, others with feathers or glowing eyes. They spoke without words, using thoughts and emotion. Raylan felt like a child before them, but he stood tall. Alira stepped forward first and bowed, showing respect with hands over her heart. She explained everything, how the war had been planned. In secret, how she had tried to stop it, how both sides had betrayed peace for power. She showed them the message she had broadcast, the proof of her cousin's attack. The battle logs from the Valar. Raylan spoke after her with a voice steady, but rough from days of shouting over alarms and smoke. He told them of Earth's fear, of how humanity had fought for survival since first reaching the stars. He said they didn't want to be rulers of the galaxy or slaves to it. They just wanted a chance to live with dignity, with truth. The Circle listened without judgment. They didn't speak for a long time. When they did, their voices echoed through the minds of all who stood inside. You bring light and fire. You bring wounds and truth. But peace is not built with words alone. Will you stand against your own, if they come with blood? Raylan nodded. Yes. Lyra didn't look away. I already have. The council moved as one, a silent decision passing between them like wind. They would not fight, but they would reveal the truth to the galaxy. Varelia's ancient networks, older than any empire, would broadcast the uncut truth to every system. The lies would end. But then a warning came. From orbit, Varn's ship had called reinforcements. Both Thalari and human war fleets had jumped to Varelia's edge. They didn't care for peace. They had come to end it. Massive ships blocked the stars. Their weapons lit up like suns. The Council could protect only the surface. They would not attack, but they would not stop those who came. If Raylan and Alira wanted to stop the war, they had to go back up one more time. The Valor couldn't fly. But Kale, the smuggler who helped them before, had arrived with her ship, a fast attack cruiser called the Grudge. It wasn't pretty, but it was fast, armed, and angry. Raylan, Alira, and a small team of loyal crew boarded it, and Kale took them into the sky like a knife through silk. What followed was a battle of chaos. Human ships fired first, thinking Thalary vessels were making a move. Fired back. Dozens of ships clashed in the sky above Varelia. Raylan and Kale pushed the Grudge through gaps and blasts, dodging fighters and weaving through beams. Alira used the Cums to try one last time, sending her voice into every ship, human and alien. She begged them to stop. She shouted the truth. Some listened, some didn't. One of the Earth generals, Commander Griggs, recognized Raylan's voice and ordered a ceasefire. But Varn wouldn't stop. His flagship powered up its planet-killer cannon, aimed at Varelia. He said if he couldn't have peace his way, he would burn everything. Raylan had one chance. He flew the Grudge into the heart of Varn's ship, using an old smuggler route through its underbelly. Alira led a boarding team, while Kale handled the engines. The fight inside was short, brutal, and close. Raylan faced Varn in a final dual blade. To blade, strike to strike. Varn was stronger, but Raylan was faster, more determined. The fight ended with Varn falling, stunned but alive. The cannon was shut down. Outside, the fleet stopped firing. The message had spread. The proof was real. The truth had been heard. For a long moment, nothing moved. And then, for the first time in decades, ships of war turned away from each other. Some retreated, some powered down. The skies went quiet. Peace had not been won forever. But the war had been stopped for now. It started with two people who chose love over fear. ChatGPT said, peace came slowly, like morning light after a long, dark storm. The fleets above Varalia began to pull back, one by one, as messages from the Accord spread across the galaxy. The truth had been seen, and it struck harder than any weapon. People began asking questions on Earth, in the Thalari Empire, and on neutral worlds in between. Soldiers hesitated, commanders refused to fire, and old enemies stopped speaking in threats. But though the battle had ended, Raylan and Alira knew the fight was not over. Varn had been taken into custody by the Council, and though he was no longer a threat, others like him still waited in the shadows. The Emperor of the Thalari had not spoken. Earth's high command remained silent. Both sides were watching, waiting to see what would happen next. The Valar could no longer fly, but her crew had not scattered. They stayed at Varelia, repairing what they could, keeping watch, and helping others who came seeking truth. Refugees arrived from systems once caught in the war's edge, bringing fear, stories, and hope. Raylan worked non-stop, coordinating efforts, building defenses, and gathering information. He was no longer just a captain, he had become a symbol. A voice people trusted. Alira, too, stepped into a new role. She met with diplomats and wandering leaders, opening talks between humans and aliens who had never spoken before. Her face was no longer that of a runaway princess. It was a beacon of change. But not everyone was ready to change. One night, a group of masked assassins broke into the healing quarters where Alira was resting. They moved fast and quiet, trained. And cold, but Raylan had stayed close. He heard the noise, rushed in with a small team, and fought with everything he had. The fight was rough, and one of his crew fell, but they stopped the attackers. The Council found proof that the killers had been paid by a secret group within the Thalari court, those who feared Alira's new voice and wanted her gone. She wasn't surprised, but Raylan was angry. He had seen too many good people fall to silence and shadows. He stood before the Council and asked for permission to return to the stars, not to wage war, but to speak the truth in places where it was still being hidden. The Council agreed. Alira went with him. Together, they boarded a new ship, a gift from the Council called the Dawnfire Fast. Strong and able to reach systems deep in both Thalari and human space. Their mission was simple: bring truth to the people, speak with leaders, and warn of the old powers still trying to drag the galaxy back into war. They visited planets torn by fear and distrust, and in each place they met both resistance and hope. On one world, they calmed a riot. On another, they stopped a planned attack just by arriving early and sharing evidence. Sometimes they were welcomed with flowers, sometimes with guns, but they never stopped. Raylan's strength and calm leadership gave people courage. Alira's kindness and wisdom opened hearts. Together, they showed the galaxy what it meant to fight, not with ships and bombs, but with honesty and unity. Still, there were moments of pain. They received messages from friends who were being hunted. They watched worlds fall to small wars, started by lies. Sometimes, in the quiet hours between missions, they held each other close, speaking of their fears in the future. They knew they couldn't save everyone, but they refused to give up. Their love, born in fire, had become something moribund that gave others the courage to believe that peace was possible. After many months, they returned to Varelia, where the Council greeted them not just as guests, but as guardians of a new age. The stars above were no longer filled with warships, but with traders, scholars, and peace messengers. Small alliances had formed between species that once hated each other. And though danger still lingered in dark corners, the galaxy had begun to heal. One evening, under the twin moons of Varelia, Raylan and Alira stood on the balcony of the Heart Dome, watching the stars in silence. Their hands were joined, their eyes tired, but filled with hope. "Do you think it will last?" Alira asked softly. Raylan looked up, thought for a long moment, and then smiled. "Maybe not forever, but long enough for something better to grow." She leaned her head against his shoulder, and together they watched the stars keep shining, no longer just lights in the dark, but signs of a future that might finally belong to all. ChatGPT said. Months passed, and peace spread slowly but firmly across the stars, like dawn across a cold battlefield. Raylan and Alira had become symbols of a new age age not ruled by fear or power, but by truth, choice, and connection. The Dawnfire kept moving from system to system, carrying them into places where hope was still fragile.
Ow.
On many worlds, children now played in streets once filled with smoke. Flags of war were lowered. Some wounds remained deep and painful, but healing had begun. Still, not all hearts had changed. In hidden places, leaders who had lost power watched with bitterness. Whispers of rebellion stirred. Raylan's name was praised by the common folk, but hated by those who had fed on war. On Earth, there were movements that still called him a traitor. In the Thalari Empire, nobles who once backed Varn quietly plotted revenge. Then came word of a secret alliance forming in the dark regions. Of space, a pact between old warlords, exiled admirals, and rogue commanders from both human and alien sides. Their plan was clear: to strike at the heart of this new peace before it could fully take root. They called themselves the Burning Path. Their goal was chaos. Raylan and Alira returned to Varelia one last time, meeting with the Council and a gathering of peaceful leaders. What they proposed was bold-uniting ships from many species, not under one flag, but in one cause: defense of peace. It would be a fleet unlike any before. Old rivals working side by side, not to conquer, but to protect. The Council gave its blessing. Soon, the stars shimmered with ships of every design and color, carrying banners of peace, but weapons ready. To defend it, Raylan took command of the united fleet. Alira served as its voice, reaching out to those still on the edge, asking for unity, not surrender. When the Burning Path launched their first strike, destroying a peaceful colony and sending a cruel message to the galaxy, Raylan did not hesitate. The fleet moved. The final battle began near the Ashlight Veil, a thick nebula where old wars had left space shattered and wild. The enemy waited in hiding, using broken moons and gravity traps to mask their power. But Raylan had planned for it. He used maps built from the memories of refugees, guidance from Varelia's watchers, and strategies drawn from both human and Thalari wisdom. As the battle raged, the sky burned. Ships twisted through debris, shields flashed, beams cut through blackness. Alira stayed on the command deck, voice steady, sending calm across the chaos. Fighters on both sides listened to her, and many once. Loyal to the burning path turned away, realizing the lies they had followed. In the final hour, Raylan led a strike deep into the heart of the enemy fleet. The core ship, a massive dreadnought built from the wrecks of fallen empires, fired a cannon that could tear moons in half. Raylan's ship took a direct hit, its engines dying, systems failing. Fire filled the halls. The crew screamed. Lyra refused to leave his side. Together, they crawled through smoke, reaching the manual override to launch the last weapon, a pulse charge designed to disable enemy ships without killing. But to arm it, one had to stay behind. Raylan tried to push Alira back. She held his hand tighter. "We do this together," she said. He looked into her eyes, saw everything they had built, everything they had lost and saved. Then he nodded. They armed the charge. The pulse exploded across space, a wave of energy that shut down enemy ships like candles blown out by wind. Da-da-da-da! Dreadnought floated dead. The fleet of peace held. For a moment, silence, then cheers. Ships lit up in signal flashes of victory. Across the galaxy, people wept, celebrated, and prayed. Raylan and Alira were found hours later, unconscious but alive, pulled from the smoke by Kale and a rescue team. The price had been high, but peace had survived. In time, the galaxy rebuilt not just cities, but trust. Humans and Thalari now sat at the same tables, sharing knowledge, guarding against old mistakes. The name Burning Path faded like an old scar. Raylan and Alira stepped away from command. They returned to Varelia, where they planted a tree in the fields near the Heart Dome, a symbol of what they had fought for. Sometimes, children came to listen to their story. They always laughed when Raylan joked about how terrifying Alira had been the first time they met, and they listened with wide eyes when Alira spoke of choosing love, even when it seemed foolish. Their story lived on. A love that began with a first contact turned into a spark that lit a galaxy, not with fire, but with hope. And, in that hope, humanity found not just victory, but something far greater, a future.